All right, we're going to look at graphing an equation in factored form. And this is what factored form looks like. Y equals A times x minus p and x minus q. So you know that notice it looks like kind of like when we solved by factored form. Factored form just means that my quadratic over here is factored. If I were to FOIL them, then it would take it back to standard form and it'd look kind of like with that x squared and stuff. But sometimes this is very useful because if I were trying to solve, I could easily find what my roots are. Well, they're going to be p and q. So the roots are p0 and q0, and then they show up right here on my graph. And that makes it easy to graph. Now, the only other thing I need to know besides those 2 points is my vertex. Now, the axis of symmetry, which if you'll remember goes through the vertex, is going to be p plus q over 2. And that is because my two roots you would expect to be the same distance from my line of symmetry. So we're basically just taking an average. We're adding them together, finding the distance between the two of them, divide by 2, and that gives me this point here in the middle where my vertex is. And then in order to find the y value, then we're going to have to plug that x value back into our equation and find it. So let's give this a try. Here's our first one, and here's our equation. The first thing we're going to do is find our x-intercepts. Normally we would find our vertex first, but because that's what's the easiest to pull out here, that's what we're going to do. And remember, that means what makes these two things 0. So it's going to be -1 and +3. So on my graph, get my graph here. Okay. Let me get my graph so it's right in place. All right. So on my graph, I'm going to plot my -1 right there and +3. 1, 2, 3 right there. So those are my two roots. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to try and find is my vertex. And I'm going to get that by using this right here, p plus q divided by 2. This is p and this is q. So 1 plus -3 divided by 2. 1 plus -3 divided by 2 is 1. So my axis of symmetry is x equals 1. That also means that that's the first part of my vertex. Now, in order to find the y value, I'm actually going to plug in my x values into this equation and solve it. So y equals 1 plus 1 times 1 minus 3. Y equals 2 times -2. So y equals -4. -4, and that's my vertex, 1, -4. So 1, 1, 2, 3, -4. There it is. And that is all I need to make a parabola. So there's my parabola. Now, does it have a maximum or a minimum? Well, it has a minimum because it's opening up. So it has a minimum. Domain and range. Domain is always all real numbers on a parabola. The range, because it's a minimum, nothing below our vertex exists. Or the parabola is not down there, so I don't have a range down there. I only have a range going up. So y is greater than or equal to -4. And we got that -4 from that vertex value right there. So that is it. Now let's try another one. Okay. The x-intercepts are going to be -1 and +5. So a -1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, and a +5 right there. Yeah, I'm going to use my red. I think it's easier to see. Okay, here we go. Now my axis of symmetry, we're going to get from that p plus q. So oops, sorry, not negative 1, positive 1. 1 plus negative 5 divided by 2. And, okay, let me see. I'm going to do this over again. So P is negative 1 plus Q, which is 5, divided by 2. And that gives me 4 over 2, which is 2. Right, so the first point in my vertex is 2. Then I have negative 2 plus 1 times 2 minus 5, and that's going to give me a 9. So I have 2, 9. So over 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And draw my parabola. Okay, and this then, since it's opening down, which I would have expected since it had that little negative there, is going to have a maximum. The domain is all real numbers. And since it doesn't go any higher than that, so there's no range up here, I'm going to say my range is less than or equal to the 9. It's all down below. Right? And that is how you graph by factored form. Did you notice? Look at the format. So here's the format again. If it's a positive, that means if my leading coefficient or my A was positive, that it made a parabola that opens up. And if the leading coefficient is negative, it is a parabola that opens down. And that's pretty consistent with any form of quadratic that you have. But I thought that was cute. All right, that's it.